Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. It is great to be with you. Thanks for joining us. Fine balls McWednesday to you and yours. I'm Jeff. That is Director Matthew. We are online, ESPNTallahassee.com. That's where you're going to listen live via the streaming free. Always don't miss anything, but if you do, go back, get caught up at your leisure. We'll post all 3 hours of the program upon its conclusion, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts. Email the show if you like, jcs at 979espnradio.com. Find me on Twitter at jcameron.show. Hello, YouTubers. Hope you're well. Thanks for tuning in. All guests appear via the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway, 833 West Gain Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. Right from the top here, I know earlier today I tweeted out that I had an announcement, and I do. We're sticking with it this time, everybody. I didn't screw this one up this time. We are going to make the announcement. But I first wanted to acknowledge, obviously, before we make this announcement, something much bigger than this announcement, and that is the news that legendary Florida State football coach and Hall of Fame football coach Bobby Bowden has been sadly diagnosed with a terminal medical condition. He and his family announced that today in a statement to the Tallahassee Democrat. Quote, "I've always tried to serve God's purpose for my life on and off the field, and I am prepared for what is to come." That according to Coach Bowden in a statement. "My wife and our family have been life's greatest blessing. I am at peace." Of course, Coach Bowden is 91 years old, and he coached here at Florida State, legendarily so, for 34 years before retiring in 2009. Second winningest coach in Division I history. Obviously, we know about the national championships, but we know more importantly about the man that he was and is. And, I always had the good fortune of having the opportunity to cover practice back in the days, thanks to Coach Bowden, that they were wide open. And we would go out there and watch practice. And when I first broke into this business, having the opportunity to do that helped shape me and help give me the ability to come on the airwaves with context and information that I thought my listeners would want. And over the many years, Coach Bowden obviously helped shape what this program became and made it an elite football program. But more important than that, I think anybody that knows the man very well will tell you that his greatest accomplishment, of course, is who he was as an individual, who he is as an individual, and the kind of family man that he is. So we wanted to acknowledge right from the start that announcement today that Coach Bowden, in a statement to the Tallahassee Democrat, revealing, unfortunately, that he has a terminal illness. We'll have an opportunity to talk more about Coach Bowden, and I will. I didn't want to just proceed with this big announcement and not acknowledge the greater importance of what happened today with Coach Bowden making that announcement. So with that being said, it's tough to segue, but I want the opportunity to do so now. I've been talking about it for weeks on end, and I bring in my dear friend Gene Williams, founder and administrator of WarChant.com. By now, it's not a mystery if you're tuned in to what's about to be said here, but I am pleased to announce that the future home of the Jeff Cameron Show will be on WarChant.com, also with our partners at 93.3 FM Real Talk Radio. So that is going to happen, and we'll get into the subsequent details in just a moment. But, Gene, it is good to have you in studio, sir. How about this, huh? First of all, thanks, brother. I'm so excited. And to all the people on the boards right now, on WarChant.com, on the YouTube channel, I can't tell you how excited I am to join the team and to carry on the tradition of the Jeff Cameron Show and covering Florida State and all of college sports for that matter. And I'm able to do that thanks in large part because of Eugene and what we were able to work out.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I know now we're live on YouTube. We've already getting close to 1,000 people already watching live. And I want to say Jeff did intro talking about Coach Bowden, or our prayers are to Coach Bowden and his family. And it's a somber day. We had a discussion, should we postpone this? But we do want to acknowledge that we recognize, and again, I know it's a cliche, but he's a better person than he is a coach. And to having to deal with him, I've covered him for 25 years. You said he allowed you to be out there. When I first got out there, I mean, we were the scourge. Internet did some crazy fad, but he allowed me. Most coaches were not letting internet people out there. He did. He was great to me. I'm so thankful to him and just all the wonderful things he's done for thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. He's just a great human being. So, again, I want to acknowledge that first. But, yes, on a positive note, Jeff, I'm so excited. We've known each other for so long. We've been good friends, been work colleagues. It just seemed like a match made in heaven when you started approaching me about this, it was just click, 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 click. This works. Wait, this is perfect. Yeah, that falls into place. And then, of course, Tom bringing, but yes, Tom will be back with Jeff.
Yep.
So the dynamic duo will be back in action. Excited about that. And it'll be starting up in a couple weeks. You mentioned 93.3 here in Tallahassee. A nice thing also, in addition to radio in Tallahassee, this YouTube channel, if you're watching this live or you're watching on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, we're able to do those. You can do that every single day now on War Chant's channels. We will have his show streamed live, including Seminole Headlines. Yes,
yep.
Ira and the infamous Corey Clark will be back in action. We're hoping to also stream that live, so you'll see what shenanigans this three can get into when you put them all in a room on a live video. I don't know. We might have to have someone in here to hit the censor button, especially with Corey. Get a little ornery there sometimes. But very exciting, Jeff. Happy to have you part of the team. Really has created the ultimate dream team here at warchant.com. I couldn't be more thrilled. We've got a video come up that we pre-recorded last night, but I said it then. It's just I feel like a proud papa bringing all these great people, just great professionals. They know what they're doing. But also, these are wonderful people who love hanging out with each other, sharing a cold one, sharing stories, having a laugh. I mean, it's great, and I think that's gonna transfer to what we do, whether it's on the radio, podcast, video. I think you're going to see that genuineness be all together. And
a shared passion too, Gene. That's the thing. It's early on, and I know we do have the video that's going to roll where we have a larger discussion about me joining the team, and I'm very excited to do it, obviously. But, I think back to days, I've brought this up on the air many times before, when I was in school and I was covering, in my head, I was covering Florida State. What would it be like? I remember sitting over at Dick Howser Stadium in the bleachers doing homework, thinking, wouldn't it be really cool one day to be able to cover Florida State, baseball, football, basketball, the whole thing. And then several years later, it happened, and we met almost immediately because I began really a radio career that goes back to 97, but by the time I got into Tallahassee, it's 98. And, you're already up and running with the website, and we forged a partnership pretty early on, and really remarkable. And we've always shared a passion. We didn't always agree on everything, but it was always amicable and professional, but also we forged a friendship. So to have this chance now to join forces with you and to be able to thoroughly cover this multimedia, with all of my friends, and I call these folks friends at warchant.com as well as coworkers now. I mean, obviously, Tom and I reuniting is a big deal to me. He's a dear friend and an incredible producer. But the opportunity to work with Ira and Corey, who are also dear friends and whom I do a show with, and Aslan over the years I've gotten to know very well, and he is a pro's pro and friend as well. And Austin, I'm looking forward to working with you. And, of course, I've known Michael Langston forever, too, and he's as good as they come. So it's an opportunity to join forces with people that I know and love, who share a passion, who are professional, smart, fun to be around, entertaining, and informative. You can't ask for anything more than that, and now we get to do that in a way that is as thorough as you could possibly ask for. I could not be more excited, Gene.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. You started bringing it up, the possibility, and as Ira said in the video you're going to see, he just never thought it was going to happen, but it did. It came to fruition. It's not just, I want to let people know, you're working for War Chant, so it's not just, of course, it's great to have the Jeff Cameron Show every single day. Seminole Headlines back. We're talking pregame shows.
That's
We're
right.
talking. We'll release some details talking about a show with you and Ira every week.
Yeah, that's going to be a weekly show.
Get you two guys together, and like what we're doing now. This is what I love about this. There's so many negative things about the internet, but here's what I love now. We're seeing the interactivity of the fans. This is great because you guys, whether it's not just calling in like we used to do back in the day, but it's people interacting, asking us questions, making comments in real time. We can interact with them here. Eric Angel, by the way, thank you, Eric. $20 already on the board. We got your first donation.
How about that?
Thank you, buddy.
There we go, guys. I like this. This
So,
is working out
this is
well.
why Jeff saw the super chats and he goes, I saw Aslan and Corey getting all that money here from our good friends who were so overly generous with the tips, man, and he wanted to be a part of that. So I mean that's neat too. But that's one of the wonderful things about technology, man. We were right there with the fans.
Yeah.
We'll be able to pop a cold one and sit there and talk about FSU sports and football, and hopefully, a season that's going to look better and better. I mean, we're getting all this off-season stuff has been really exciting with Mike Norvell. It's relatively speaking, not that they're going to make a playoff run, the fact that we see some real tangible improvements on the horizon. So that's kind of a neat place to be right now.
I think it's an amazing opportunity because, look, I was already excited about this season, and then we began to have these discussions when I realized ESPN was selling and where I was going to go next. And, luckily, there were some people who wanted to talk to me about that. But when you and I sat down, it just made a lot of sense. And the more we talked about the possibilities, was it feasible? How would it work? And the more we saw eye to eye, the more excited I got. But I also thought about it this way, and just pragmatic. This is a fascinating campaign Florida State's about to embark on. And you got to figure where they're at. Now, listen, we've seen this program crash and burn over the last 4 years, and it's been brutal to try to cover and watch, and obviously our heartstrings, for our school, it's really difficult. But something to note with that is that the climb and the time spent watching a team rise back up from the ashes and have success is an awful lot of fun to cover. I will tell you that it is, because there will be trials and tribulations. We're going to be sitting around talking about what didn't go right, what did go right, what progress we saw, what still needs to be done. And certainly this is not a place in which people hold back opinions. We're able to go ahead and have those discussions. And we don't always agree, but it's a lot of fun to hear that discourse, because that's what a fan base is, and that's what the message boards are, and that's what radio listeners do every day on their drive home. So it's ideal to watch this thing on the come up and really kind of analyze where they're at. It's a process. It's not always as quick as we'd like it to be, but it's something we do like to document. And I think professionally as well as personally, I couldn't be more excited to have this chance, because there's going to be a lot to talk about week to week. I mean, a lot. I mean, they're going to have some days where you think we're miles away. And there are going to be days where we go, okay, I see it. I see the vision. And we're going to get excited about those times too.
It's funny you brought that up, because you said we don't always agree. But, man, the one thing that always drew me to you, Jeff, and it's just you say what you feel. You don't hold back too much. And, look, it rubs some people the wrong way. I get it. But, that's the thing I always want my staff, man. We want legitimate opinions. I don't want you to be, I don't want you to be soft and mellowy or whatever. Everything's wonderful. I don't want sunshine and rainbows. But also, you guys don't sensationalize either.
Don't make something up.
There's a balance to be just serious and legitimate, and I think that's what I've tried to make War Chant a part of. Look, we're I guess they call it a fan site, whatever. I don't necessarily like that, because so much people with decades of experience, professionals, but we are here for the fans. We are with you. We understand the passion. We understand the pain, which there's been a lot of lately.
Yeah.
We can empathize with you on that stuff. But we're going to tell you straight. If it's bad, we're going to tell you. We want to talk about it. If it's positive, we're going to tell you about it. I think one thing you've been able to do, going back to, heck, all the crap you got back in the day, all the Jeff Bowden stuff. But I mean, I earned a lot. You earned a lot of respect from me and a lot of people, because you're able to stick your neck out for something you believed in, and you were, as it turns out, you were pretty damn on the mark.
Well, it's weird too, on a day in which we did begin the show acknowledging the sad announcement from Coach Bowden and his family regarding his terminal illness, and I have nothing but immense respect for the man, nothing but love for the man. And let me just say this. Coach Bowden may have gotten angry with me back when I was giving those opinions, which you just alluded to, but he never ostracized me. He never pushed me away and said I couldn't cover the team. Never said, he respectfully disagreed with me, and I understand that, and I felt like I was doing my job. But I've grown up a little bit since then, too. I mean, I'm now married with a family of my own, and I think I probably, in times in the past, may have crossed the line. I think that other times I certainly was, as you just noted, spot on. It's not about being right there. It's about being genuine. It's about being authentic and being honest as best you can, and your analysis is sometimes spot on, sometimes it's not. But I just want to acknowledge that, yes, Coach Bowden never said, "Oh, that guy can't cover me." That guy, he was absolutely understanding. I've always appreciated that. So I know there are people that hold resentment. There are still others who say what you say, which is it's a good thing you said that. Whatever that might be, that's in the past. I do know now, though, that has served me well, and I think it serves the listeners and the readers and anybody else who cares about Florida State well to get honest opinions about what we're seeing. So that won't change.
Yeah, and hey, by the way, Shane, who's one of the pillars. We call them pillars when the guys who are just so generous, like Shane Kirkley is, man, $100.
Oh, my
Thank
goodness
you, Shane.
gracious.
You're the man.
See, I can't see your screen. We've got this mic here, and I'm sorry.
We got mics and crazy cameras all over the place.
Acknowledged everybody. That's an amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. But yeah, you're right on that. And again, if you missed the beginning of this, we gave our condolences to Coach Bowden and his family, and the news that came out today from the Democrat that he's got a terminal illness, and it's just somebody we have a ton of respect for. And you're right, Jeff. I've had so many personal experiences, and I've screwed up at times, and I early on trying to figure out my way. Coach Bowden, he a couple times I remember in his golf cart, he'd come by, he'd pull me aside and, son, why did you do this? And that would, I'm like, Coach, you're right. He said, I'm going to, I'm for second chances. You screwed up on something, you reported, and he did. And I learned from it. And, I had a ton of respect for him. He didn't pop off. He didn't get mad at me. He just said, hey, why'd you do that? Let's not do that. Let's not make that mistake again. And 99% of coaches, the egos these guys have. They would not have behaved that way. So I owe so much to Coach Bowden for what he's done. And, again, prayers to Coach and his family. When
you're cutting your teeth in the industry, there's a lot to learn, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And you only hope that when you make those mistakes, those that take issue with it deal with it professionally and teach you another way, or show you what it is to have another side of things and to give you the greater context or bigger picture. I've dealt with coaches who don't. I know what it's like to be on the wrong end, even irrationally. So of coaches who maybe disagreed with something I've said, and there's
Read between the lines.
Yeah,
You know who he's talking about.
There's a vast difference. But even those guys can be great too. It's just there are very different ways of dealing with things, and he was always a pro's pro. But I don't want to belabor the point. I did want to get it out there today because I accidentally tweeted out last Sunday. Here you are on vacation, and I ruined your vacation. I tweeted out how excited I was to announce what we're announcing today, because I couldn't wait. I was overzealous to announce this on Monday. And I get this, if you don't mind, I get this text from Gene Williams, and he says, Jeff, I really appreciate your enthusiasm, and I, too, am really excited about this. Can we hold off to maybe Wednesday or Thursday when I'm back in the country? Can we just do that? And then also I had one of my attorneys say, hey, dumbass, let's not do that just yet. Let Gene get back into the country and so we can dot some I's. And so anyhow, my apologies to all of you for having to delay it, but I'm glad we were able to do it.
But, Jeff,
today.
it's the old, hey, speaking of coaches, one you say it's better to say whoa than giddy up.
Yeah.
I definitely had to say, whoa there, son. You were getting out in front of your saddle a little bit there. But
I was excited.
But I like that. I love the enthusiasm, Jeff. You're going to bring that to War Chant. You're going to bring that to all the JCS listeners every single day, starting in a couple weeks with Tom Lang. And again, all these people on YouTube and Facebook and all the various outlets that we have. And again, you can listen if you're not on time. And the nice thing, we'll talk about the time frame later. We should have it set up where you can listen to podcasts by the time you're driving home from work.
That is correct.
So you got a little wake up War Chant in the morning on your way to work, whatever you do, and then on the way home. Yeah, we got you covered.
Yeah, that's one thing, and we'll get more specific about the airtime for the Jeff Cameron Show. But I will say that it's certainly working towards my friends at 93.3 FM and Real Talk Radio. This is all but almost ironed out about exactly how it's going to look. I just want to save the details for next week, early next week. But this is going to be a great partnership. So, Gene, I thank you again, and I want to thank all the subscribers and those on YouTube and everybody else that's listened over the years. I have so many people to thank in the coming days, and I will do that. But for now, it's great to be aboard the warchant.com.
There you go. Got the shirt already, man.
On already. Gene comes prepared. Walked through the door with a shirt and threw it away. So it's good. It's a good fit, and it feels that way to me too. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, let me preface this really quick. When we come back, I got a chance to talk to Tom Lang in Charlotte at the ACC kickoff. It's first year I haven't been there in forever, and so I feel a little bit like a fish out of water not being able to document that in person. I did the next best thing. I got Tom on board, and he's going to check in and talk about what the new commissioner, Jim Phillips, had to say, what he heard from coaches from the Coastal. Obviously, FSU and the other Atlantic coaches talk tomorrow. So an opportunity to check in, at least for today, and we'll play that for you next. That was just before the show that I caught up with him, so we would be able to segue right to that. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Holy Jesus.
Opportunity now to jet out to Charlotte, where I typically am this time of year for the ACC meetings, the ACC kickoff. But my cohort, my partner in crime, and now, again, my co-worker, Tom Lang, is there in Charlotte on behalf of warchant.com, and he joins us now on the Jeff Cameron Show. Hello, good sir. How is that hotel that we've been at many, many times?
It's largely the same. Good afternoon to you, and hello, champion. That doesn't get old yet, right? We can
Never.
still do that?
Oh, up until we're not, sure. Yeah, hello, champion. Okay. And we're able to do it on the regular since there are multiple champions from our hometown.
I also can report to you that our pal from Virginia Tech was here and looking as dapper as ever on Coastal Wednesday.
Do you know how much that excites me to hear? I have to tell you,
I knew it would.
Well, it's crazy. There are little things you look forward to at the ACC meetings. They're largely uneventful, to be honest with you, and especially on a day in which Florida State's not featured. Today was being the Coastal. You always want to hear, in this case, from the new commissioner, and you want to hear from coaches, but to find out that certain staples remain the same, especially in the wake of having lost our favorite coach in the conference that doesn't coach FSU, that is, a couple of years back now, we need to know some things remain the same, and that man's energy and enthusiasm for doing the job of PR for Virginia Tech is unwavering, is what you're telling me right now. That smile is, in fact, in place.
Oh, it was in place, and that was around 8:15 this morning, and I don't know that it ever stopped, because that's who he is. But I can tell you, too, that, of course, I miss you already, but I really missed you when I tapped Aslan on the shoulder. I was like, there he is. And he goes, who? I'm like, oh, well, you'll get it at some point, but there he is. That's our guy, man.
It's one of the things that we'll bring.
Making the rounds. A lot of the teams are making the rounds today, but it's, for being a COVID event last year in which it's all on Zoom, this feels pretty much the same as it did in 2019. So a little bit of normalcy isn't a bad thing.
Okay, so let's acknowledge first that ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips was immediately pretty much asked. I want to get your overriding thoughts on what you heard from Jim Phillips in a moment, but I knew he would be asked, as all the commissioners are. Big Ten commissioners about to be asked this tomorrow. It was asked of Sankey of the SEC today. Jim Phillips, of course, about the teams, the players, the coaches being vaccinated as we move towards this season that we hope feels an awful lot like a pre-pandemic normal campaign where players and coaches fear not that on game day they have to wait until the last moment to find out if they're playing, and fans can, of course, find their way to their seats en masse. But we do have the variant that is on the rise. There's no denial of that, and these commissioners are going to be asked the question. For his part, Jim said that he knows the conference, for the most half, over half the teams, in fact, have exceeded the 85% vaccination threshold. He did add there's still no decision currently on whether games affected by COVID-19 will be rescheduled or rather forfeited. Now, I take a stance on this that may differ from others. I believe that if at this day and age we're still dealing with people not wanting to be vaccinated, that is their choice. But, of course, it is also the league's choice to decide whether or not you can play football if you're not. And I think in order to find this sense of normalcy of which we speak, you're going to have to mandate it. And if guys don't want to do it, they don't have to do it, but they also don't have to play football. And therefore, we avoid the NC State College World Series situation, Tom. Can you give me any more on what you've heard from Commissioner Phillips?
Yeah, sure. So specific to that, I think he's got to really do a tightrope walk in his first ACC kickoff. It's his first real chance as commissioner to address the media. People show out for, as much as maybe the old guard wants to believe that there's a bigger turnout for the basketball media day. This is the day when you can have the most ears and eyes on you. And he's got to make sure that he respects the universities to make their own decisions, and then, moreover, the players and the coaches to make their own decisions. But he was unequivocal in stating that from a personal standpoint, he's a big believer in, the science of things and getting the vaccine and obviously moving things along. But he did stop short because without maybe Power 5 or the entire conference in agreement on a policy, it's tough for him to make definitive statements and maybe overstep his bounds. So I think he was extremely cognizant of where to walk the line, but he went as far as he possibly could to suggest, this is something that needs to get done. And he did that on a number of issues, but certainly That was one of the big ones that people were listening for. And then one other thing I can tell you is, with the Delta variant on the rise, he was asked, do you have any answers on policies when it comes to rescheduling or postponements or forfeits? What's the ACC's, policy going to be on these potential issues that might crop up? And his answer was reasonable. It essentially is, listen, everything is fluid. If we've learned anything about COVID and the situation of how things move with COVID, you've got to wait for as much information as possible before making a decision. You need to be as informed as possible, because the rule you make today may be completely outdated 2 weeks from now. So I thought that was a reasonable answer.
It's a very good answer. It's an on your feet, on your toes kind of answer that buys you time to kind of figure out an overriding policy. I do like that he stated unequivocally, to your point, there's no question that increasing the number of vaccinations provide the best chance for teams to compete. That's the bottom line. That is true. We know that to be true. And I think commissioners are losing patience, if judging by Sankey and Phillips' comments, that not all these teams are adhering or really aggressively pursuing this option. Certainly in the Southeastern Conference, it's no surprise that is the case. It'll be interesting to see what the mandate becomes moving forward, because the NCAA and these universities cannot afford to have games canceled again. We know about the financial losses. They're going to have to make extreme decisions. Now, we move on from that, Tom. You just said something that he had answers prepared, but it felt like to you he wanted to say more. Can you be more? Yeah. Can you extend on that a little bit more? Sure. And give me some more insight on what you mean when you say that?
TV, first and foremost. He made a point to prepare remarks from start to finish in his statement. None of it was off the cuff. He was constantly checking it was old school printer paper that he was looking down and making sure he hit all the notes that he wanted to. So I think this is somebody, first of all, that is very careful. Every word matters when you read a transcript from the commissioner. Every word is carefully crafted. But with TV and distribution, he brought up that, it's one of the cries of all 15-member institutions, when you include Notre Dame and all sports but football, that distribution has to get better. Got to be on more TVs. And there was a reporter from Roanoke who took advantage of the moment, because they announced 2 extra games on the ACC network for this season, one of which was Virginia Tech and Notre Dame. I believe it's Notre Dame at Virginia Tech. But either way, the reporter from Virginia said, well, here's the problem is within 10 minutes of that being announced, a lot of folks are saying, we can't get the network, so what are you going to do about it? And it seems like he's optimistic that in a couple of weeks' time, they may have some announcements. And the way he couched it was late summer, early fall. That's typically when renewal negotiations come to a conclusion. And that's when Comcast deal, of course, we all know about this, especially in our part of the woods, is Comcast comes up next year, early next year. So would it be on in a market like ours? And I think he's prepared to say something more important, something that would catch our eyes. But this is somebody who very much, I think, values all I's being dotted and T's being crossed before committing to that. So the number one thing I would say is distribution. And he knows, he said it, for us to be the league that we want to be, distribution is number one. So I know that's music to the ears of Florida State fans and all of us to a degree, but you have to see it to believe it at this point, because it's been 3 years for the channel.
Yeah, it's of the utmost importance. We figured it would be his first biggest challenge, and one that he would need to hit out the stadium here. He'd have to hit a home run with something like this, if possible. We just wondered about the kind of leverage that he would have or not have. That includes whatever negotiation he's going to have with Notre Dame to try to bring them into the fold of the ACC and football full-time down the line as well. Anything from coaches that stood out today? I know, again, it's just Coastal. We're less interested in that particular division. It is part of the ACC, and there are some intriguing teams there, in particular Mac Brown in North Carolina as well as Miami. So your thoughts on what you've heard from coaches today from the Coastal?
There's not a whole lot of substance. Of course, today our focus was heavier on Miami being the rival and North Carolina being on the schedule. Ben Diaz did say some interesting things. I asked him about Derek King and what it's like to have a grad transfer quarterback, and what are the challenges and what are the benefits, because obviously with Mackenzie Milton being in the fold here, I wanted to get some insight from somebody who lived it and in a weird way gets to live it again. you don't expect a grad transfer quarterback to be around for 2 years, but alas, COVID eligibility says you can. And he gave some good answers, about as good as he possibly could. He said, our team needed somebody to reset the standard and reset the way things were done, and we needed to bring somebody from the outside to do it. I didn't believe any of the players that we had in our locker room could do it. And so, he went on and on about that, but get the point is when something's not right, sometimes turning to a veteran outside of the program is the best way to signal a reset. And maybe that's exactly what's happening with Mike Norvell. As for Mac Brown, not a whole lot. He was asked about Florida State, and he kind of chuckled. He said, well, I told our team before we kicked off in Tallahassee that we're not the number 5 team in the country despite our rankings, because there's only a few conferences playing. And then 3 hours later, we were number 25 in the country. So, we've got to focus. Ask me when we're 3-0, if we can get to 3-0, kind of a thing. So, it's the usual thing, man. You've been here for so many years. Coastal Day, you're looking for any nuggets, anything interesting. And I think number one today was just that Jim Phillips was ready to go on the record about a lot of stuff and say his piece. And I think that you're going to be hearing a lot more from the commissioner. Oddly enough, you'll be hearing a lot more from the ACC and the commissioner in the weeks to come. But all eyes are on tomorrow, as Florida State obviously brings 3 players up in the 2 quarterbacks and Jermaine Johnson. And there's going to be a ton of content on War Chant. And if we need to do another hit tomorrow, then by God, we can do it, because that's the deal we've swung.
Yeah, final couple things. Absolutely we can, and I'm excited about that. But on a somber note, certainly there will be an opportunity, because it came about later in the day, to address the sad news that legendary former Florida State coach Bobby Bowden has been diagnosed with a terminal illness for his part. He was quoted to the Tallahassee Democrat today as saying that he is at peace. We can talk more about that tomorrow, as we have touched on it some today. One final thing. I was remiss and skipped over something I wanted to ask you about the NIL and what Jim Phillips may have had to say about that, only because I think a lot of Florida State fans, and I think a lot of football fans everywhere for that matter, take a look at Nick Saban's quote at SEC Media Days, in which he is noting that his quarterback, who's never stepped foot on the field as a starting quarterback for Alabama, Bryce Young, we all know he's talented, but is approaching nearly $1 million worth of endorsement deals already. That opens a lot of eyes. It's not just Florida State fans, but the entirety of college football when they say, we're already losing out on the best players coming out of high school to Alabama. Their athletic and dominance and prowess along the sport is well noted. But now if they're also going to be able to give the players deals in which they're going to become millionaires before they ever suit up in the NFL, well, then this is over with and nobody can compete. I'm kind of curious, were any comments from coaches today as well as new Commissioner Phillips about the NIL?
Well, I think that the tune has changed for coaches that weren't on board, because you better change and adapt or else you're going to die on this front. Mac Brown was upfront about it, and his example was, well, I never thought this was a good thing, but then it was explained to me that if we have a talented musician who's on scholarship, they can still make money off of themselves for a gig. So I kind of get it about athletics. Why can't it be that way there? I think what you're going to find is the coaches who came out against players being paid are going to find similar anecdotes and all shucks kind of stuff to say in order to pivot and move forward. For Jim Phillips' case, the hard part for him is he has to speak for the whole league. And, a program like Florida State, A-OK, man, because of legislation in the state of Florida. But what he's pushing for is federal legislation so that every university can be on the same footing. Because, for his part, he said, I don't want it to become a recruiting advantage for some programs over the others. So once again, it's just one of those deals where, Commissioner Phillips may feel a certain way about things, but he has to communicate, especially in his first major address as commissioner of the league for all 14/15 programs of the conference, not just the ones that are benefiting from NIL right out the gate.
Prudent comments from a commissioner who has a lot to tackle, but has to be very careful about how he proceeds and has to get it right, especially when it's the first couple of things that you're going to be noted for, and they are as significant as they are. My brother enjoys Charlotte. Perhaps, if you're so inclined and fortunate enough, you will find that sleepy Irish pub that you and myself have been known to have a few Guinness or Guinea at in the past. I wish you well, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Be good, sir.
Yeah, sounds good. Is it Guinea? I'll ask the Irish bartender because I'm about to find him.
Yeah, I don't know, but please find out for me. As one who's been to Ireland, I could have asked the question, but perhaps I was intimidated and didn't want to look like a fool. But enjoy one either way, whether it's Guinness or Guinea, and I'll talk to you again later, buddy.
Hey, man, congrats on letting the lawyers tell you like it is again.
Yeah, man, thank you. It's good to be back with
See
you,
you,
brother. Bye. All right, that's Tom Lang of warchant.com. Kind of fun to say now that I'm a part of it as well. It's also Tom Lang of The Jeff Cameron Show and 93.3 FM Real Talk Radio. How about them apples? All right, more of The Jeff Cameron Show momentarily. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio, and thanks for joining us today. It's a busy one, to say the least. Thanks to Tom Lang joining us from Charlotte, now representing warchant.com in doing so. And, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to kind of watch the new commissioner, Jim Phillips, who has a lot on his plate. And I mentioned there that obviously a lot of things elicit sort of faux outrage these days, and a lot of things that aren't political end up falling under the umbrella of politics when they ought not. And, I think for the various leagues who would like to proceed with a season, they have to look at it that way. They have to understand that the larger discussion that is being had around the country, and also that is being had conference by conference, is really not political, even though it's become a political football. But rather something that could, in the drop of a hat, never mind the obvious health ramifications, could derail the season that they absolutely have to play. And I know certainly have the opportunity to play with very simple steps. And, again, what ends up happening is the idea that, you'll hear people say, well, you can't make those players get vaccinated. No, you can't. You can't. They don't have to. It is certainly, I heard Commissioner Phillips say he respects individuals' rights to make that choice. And I do too. But I'm really not concerned with that. That's not really what's at question here. I think what's at question here is whether or not you want to play football, because in order for us to proceed and have the season and play football, you're going to go ahead and have to get vaccinated. Certainly it's your choice not to. Have a good day. But this is open and shut. And watch how quickly we get there. Watch how quick. It's happened in other walks of life already, like travel. I mean, it's happening. And you're going to see these commissioners do that very thing. That's what's going to happen. And, I thought about this during the College World Series. Again, remove politics. Try your best in this situation while having this medical conversation to remove politics and understand that NC State did not require traveling players to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Some players then chose not to be. That opened the door at that very moment. So because they didn't get vaccinated, it opened the door to testing. They were subject to COVID-19 testing parameters, just like we saw during the 2020-21 college sports year. A few of those players ended up testing positive amongst those who were unvaccinated. Some were even, possibly from what we've read, symptomatic before arriving in Omaha. That caused vaccinated players to then be tested, which they would not have been per NCAA rules established in April of this year. And when that happened, because it is not, from an efficacy rate standpoint, 100%, but rather 90+%, then you had a couple of players who were asymptomatic but positive. Once that happened, NC State was told to have a good day and could not play. And that's tragic and completely preventable. And in that moment, I thought a couple of things. I thought about that, and it came to mind again when John Rahm, who ended up handling that very well, I might add, post-exit from the tournament that cost him $1.7 million. But I thought, this is a business decision. We've entered the realm. Now, again, there are health concerns, of course, but I'm not having that discussion on the air right now. I'm looking at this from a business standpoint. The NCAA cannot afford, and these universities cannot afford not to have a season. So what I think you're going to hear, and real soon, is that basically these commissioners are going to establish, certainly you have the right not to, but we have the right to tell you that you can't play. And, you think about even if you wanted to just localize it, immunization records are necessary for your kids to go to school. So, I mean, this is not hard. So, at the end of the day, they're going to end up doing that. And what they're doing now is buying time for coaches and university officials to try to convince the players without this being mandated, hey, guys. Now, at some schools it is already mandated. There are Big Ten schools in which it absolutely is. So, I thought it was interesting. Sankey at the SEC today said you're expected to play as scheduled, thus dispose of the game. The forfeit word comes up at that point. Basically, he's telling you you're going to forfeit. You're going to lose the game. That's it. We're done. We're not rescheduling it. We're not replaying it. You just lost. That's it. So, and also, he had to address this to a greater degree at the SEC media days because you might say to yourself, shocking, right? Well, really not at all. Of the 50 states, 4 of the 5 with the lowest vaccination rates are the SEC. Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, well. Respectively, that's 46th, 48th, 49th, and 50th in vaccination rates. Go check out the education in those states as well. It's stunning, I know. Hour number 2, forthcoming. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. to Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Thanks for tuning into the program. Appreciate you. I'm Jeff. That is Director Matthew. We are online, ESPNTallahassee.com. If you missed the first hour, it was a busy one. I would invite you to go back, get caught up. As the show concludes, I'll reiterate some of it later in the program. Don't want to spend all day on that. It is a big day. It was fun to announce. I will be continuing the Jeff Cameron Show as I now work for warchant.com, as well as the show being aired locally on 93.3 FM. So it's going to be exciting. And we have more details to come. There are other elements of this and aspects of it. Like I said, it's a multimedia opportunity for myself and others that work with this show and work for War Chant 93.3, and that's exciting for all of us. So I wanted to get that news out there after I jumped the gun earlier in the week and said that I was going to announce it on Monday but could not. Could today and did. We began the hour, though, not with that news initially, but rather with the sad note that Coach Bobby Bowden was diagnosed with a terminal medical condition. He gave a statement to the Tallahassee Democrat in which he said, "I've always tried to serve God's purpose for my life on and off the field, and I am prepared for what is to come. My wife, Ann, and our family have been life's greatest blessing. I am at peace." Certainly nice to read the last line there, that he is at peace. Of course, Coach Bowden, a legend, not just here at Florida State, but in the world of college football and beyond. 91 years of age and 34 seasons at Florida State, and a true classic. So we did acknowledge that. I don't want you to think that we just started the show with, hey, great news, moving on. But, obviously that news took precedent. So for those of you hopping in the car, maybe you didn't hear that, wanted to get that out there as well. You know what else, as an aside, that I didn't get to talk about in the last hour that I at least have to acknowledge, because I certainly enjoyed this series thoroughly, and that is that we have a new NBA champion, and it was a lot of fun to watch that series in particular because of the toughness of that Milwaukee team, which several times over had to come from a couple games down or being down in each of the series, certainly. And, they benefited just as Phoenix did from injuries. The Western Conference had that. The Eastern Conference had that. It would speak to why the current and now reigning Milwaukee Bucks NBA champions are not your favorite to win it next year. I think most recognize that that would reside to a team in Brooklyn who, if healthy, probably would have gone on to win that series. They were, after all, up in that series before the big three began to suffer injury after injury. But pay that no, never mind. Certainly it is worth noting, or at least talking about, when we look at where a team ranks all time in their path to an NBA championship. You always have to consider the path to that championship, what you have to overcome, the teams you had to beat, the stars that you had to overcome. Yeah, that's part of that story. But for me, just looking at this team in particular, two things happened that I really like and that I think are great for the NBA, and that is because of what happened this year and what happened with Toronto in Kawhi Leonard's championship there. You do get a sense that the smaller market teams and the teams who might have very passionate fan bases, who at times feel bereft of hope as to whether or not their team could ever ascend to win a championship. Well, the NBA has given you two examples in the last few years of how it can happen and that it does. Yeah, you need some good fortune. Yeah, you got to play really well. And you need your superstars to be superstars. But there is a path. It is possible. And it's happened now twice. And so the Milwaukee Bucks, for the first time since 1971, the year I was born, are NBA champions. The other thing that had to happen was an MVP player like Giannis, the Greek freak, two-time MVP, had to become the guy to go take it. This was a game, if you watched last night, how nervous were these two teams? That first quarter was dreadful. Turnovers, people struggling to deal with their emotions. And I get it. When you have an opportunity to close out in a city that is yearning, that is aching, that is desperate for a championship, you feel that energy. And that can buoy you, or that can be a burden. That can be a weight, an albatross. And I think you saw that early on with the turnovers and the way that both teams looked like their hands were made of stone. As the flow of the game got going, we had your typical ups and downs and runs that you have in an NBA game. But somewhere along the way, it became very apparent that Giannis really realized there is nobody on that Phoenix team that can guard him. That if he is physical and if he is aggressive, there is nothing that can be done to stop him from getting to the rim. And if you couple that with a night in which you come up huge from the free throw line, then you get this historic output. 50 points, 14 rebounds, 5 block shots. When you think of the annals of NBA Finals performances, closeout game performances, this now sits amongst the all-time best. You can split hairs, but you'll look back and you'll probably note, you could really easily note 3 or 4, but I think it's 5 or 6 possibly that I would include on that list. But this is now amongst that group of all-time great performances from the best player on a team to close out a series by being the MVP, by being the guy that you have been chosen to be or voted to be time and again. At some point, kicking down the door has to happen for you to ascend to a different place when these great debates take place. Now, again, you can look at that and say that that's true. It also can be that guys that didn't win championships were still all-time great players. I mean, there are plenty of them too. That just, I mean, God forbid you're Charles Barkley on that Phoenix team and you run into that guy, that team, Michael Jordan. It was not possible, right? Yeah, wrong place, wrong time, man. That I don't look at that and lay that at the feet of Barkley and say, I guess you just weren't good enough. Well, I can still see you as a world-class, all-time great player and not look at you and think, oh, well, I'm going to have to demote you to 28th on my list because you did not garner a championship. I think that's a really modern invention and an internet invention and a stupid way of having a discussion about a player's worth or analyzing their overall talents and what they brought to a career. But I do know that when you have a guy who has been a 2-time MVP in a market like Milwaukee with a surrounding cast that's nice but not that nice, and then you go on to do what you do. I mean, Middleton's a nice player. I get it. I mean, but there aren't a lot of guys on that team that you go, well, he's got, and then, Scottie Pippen to Michael Jordan. He doesn't have that. So if you go on to have the kind of, or I mean, you could even look at it in the backdrop with these super teams, right? I love this part of a guy staying put, wanting to stay put, and being rewarded for doing so and winning a championship. It's hard to do. I don't always begrudge players for leaving certain situations. If Dame ends up leaving Portland, there's a part of me that gets that. I always admired the stance that he took about wanting to stay there and to win one there and to have the opportunity. I also get that frustrations can mount if your team isn't able to successfully put some people around you to allow for that to happen. It's a fine line. But here's a guy that signed a 5-year Supermax contract extension prior to the season, quote unquote, there was a job that had to be finished. I thought staying in Milwaukee meant that we would have to do it the hard way. Coming back, I thought to myself, this is my city. They trust me. They believe in me. They believe in us. Obviously, I wanted to get the job done. That's a stubborn side of me. It's easy to go somewhere else. Love this part of the quote. Love this part of the quote. It's easy to go somewhere else and win a championship with somebody else's team. It's easy. I could go to a super team and just do my part and win a championship, but this is the hard way to do it. And this is the right way to do it. And we did it. We effing did it. Message sent. And I think fans appreciate that. It resonates. I mean, there are, a talking point that I heard last night and again this morning from all of the analysts and talking heads who look back on this run for Milwaukee in this championship. That some championships and some rings are worth more than others. and seem to last in the imagination and memory longer than others. And, if you come back from 3 games to 1 like Cleveland did over Golden State, that's something you're going to remember a little bit more, given that was an incredible Golden State team. And I understand some of the circumstances there, but if you win at a place like Milwaukee and you stick around to do it, and on the night where the opportunity comes to close it out and you drop 50, people aren't going to forget that. That is always in your back pocket.
There's been quite a run over the past couple of years of either small market teams or long since outsiders actually breaking through the glass
winning.
ceilings.
Yeah.
You start with the 2016 Cavaliers. That's their first title. The 2016 Cubs ended a 108-year drought.
Yep.
2017 Astros, first title.
We now know they were cheating, but sure.
Cheaters, yes. 2017 Eagles, almost a 60-year drought.
And with a terrible quarterback.
He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, though. The 2018 Caps, the 2019 Blues.
Yeah.
Both first titles. 2019 Raptors, 2019 Nationals, both first titles.
Yep.
2019 Chiefs, 50-year drought. 2021 Bucks, 50-year drought.
No, the Bucks. Oh, this Bucks, yeah. Tampa Bay Bucks won it in 2002.
Okay, whatever.
When you say Bucks, there's only one Buccaneers that really. Yeah, no, no, it's great. It's great. I love it. A little bit of new blood. We'd like to add Florida State to that list. Speaking of basketball, and I'll always argue that it would have happened if not for COVID. Damn it, man, that team was, in my mind, certainly a Final Four team, and I think as good as any pick to win it all had the tournament been played. Sadly, it was not. Don't want to belabor that, but it is something to think about because we got screwed. Jeff Cameron, Show 97.9, ESPN Radio.
filtered through a million lies. The whole world smelled like burning ties the day John Henry died.
Woo! Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Hello. Interesting. A couple things come to mind here in regards to this latest story, and one that I would be stunned by if it were to happen. Doesn't seem likely. To me, the Oklahoma legislature would have something to say about this, but I don't know if you guys saw this story from the Houston Chronicle. Texas, headline reads, Texas, Oklahoma reach out to the SEC about joining the conference. Ooh. What? It's certainly attention-grabbing. I read from this article, and I'll tell you what's kind of curious. And damn this subscriber login. I don't care about your login. I want to read the article. They get you, Matthew. You've already surpassed what you're allowed to read. That headline from Hoover, Alabama, is that apparently those two universities reached out in an effort to inquire about interests in joining the SEC. Immediately, there was a response from many, including a little late, guys. Could have done this 10 years ago. But also what you think of regards to the for me, just thinking about the conference, what would happen? That conference would be absolutely kneecapped. I mean, think about the remainder of that conference if that were to happen. If those two schools, Texas and Oklahoma, were to leave the Big 12 is useless. The conference is over. I got no Dukes. I got nothing else. Certainly, I think if you're like Oklahoma State or some of the other schools in that conference, you're like, no. We're no longer relevant. That's not a good thing. So, by the way, I might note that was posted by Brent Werneman from the Houston Chronicle and covers Texas A&M and more for the Houston Chronicle. So just go find that, and you'll find the Houston Chronicle's headlines. And then if you click it, they're going to say, yeah, man, we want you to pay for this. And you're going to go, I'm not paying for this. Not that much interesting happens for me where I live out of Houston. Not going to do it. But a headline that is an attention grabber, just as this is a weird hill to die on. He says he didn't, but if you read the story from CBS Sports that Deion Sanders walked out of the SWAC Media Day after Jackson State coach took issue, that's Deion, with being called Deion. Now, the retort was that, Deion asked the reporter nicely to call him coach. The reporter said no and basically called him Deion again. And at that point, he says, peace out. And, of course, that leads to a headline. I'm going to need to go see that interaction before I comment on that. I just know that era has begun poorly in terms of kind of the give and take with Deion and the press and some other things that it hasn't been rosy. So we'll wait and see. But I got to find the interaction, and it's not ideal to walk out of the media days. Do you get a bad feeling about that? You get a bad vibe about how that's going to go? I do.
I get a bad vibe off pretty much anything Deion's involved in.
Too often that seems to be the case. It's a little frustrating, but I don't want to go back through and talk about the missteps and the moments in which it got ugly. But there are too many to point to, and it's a fine line because he has entered the coaching realm. And a lot of people have looked at that as, well, where are the bona fides beyond being a Hall of Fame player? And there is no doubt he was one of the greatest players at his position in the history of football. Nobody's going to deny that, and he certainly draws attention, good and bad. And so, I don't question his knowledge, but the experience at that level of coaching is certainly something that comes into question. And then from there are going to be a lot of questions and a lot of cameras and a lot of attention paid to. And if every time that happens, there is some negative headline, even if it's well within his rights to have been upset, I'm going to go watch the video. You get a sense that at that point, your program and the progress takes a step backwards. It's just unnecessary distractions. So, but maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe I have to see how that went, whether or not somebody was baiting him. That too happens. The media does do that as well. I've witnessed it firsthand. So, you want to be balanced with that. But saw that headline. I went, that's not the headline I want from my guy at a new place. That's not what we need here. This is not going to go well. Nick Saban was asked what he likes to be called. And to his credit, he said, I've been called just about everything and answered to most. But it's really not relevant to me. I will say this. I'm going to be very curious. A big talking point over the last week plus along the lines of NIL has been about, at what point are we going to read something or learn of something that causes the typical and average fan to say, I don't know, we've got real problems here. And I don't mean that derogatory. I'm not saying that's not a cynical way of looking at fans and the way they view college football, but rather where a sport that has trended in the wrong direction, in my opinion, might very well continue to do so, in that there are precious few that are capable with the resources to dominate college football the way that they have the last 4 or 5 years. We've seen how this has become a round robin between Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Name your fourth team that wants to get their head kicked in. Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Michigan State, Washington, or anybody else that dare enter the theater, because save for Georgia, this is kind of what happens when they go and try to throw their name in the hat. So this feels a bit like, at the beginning of every season, a foregone conclusion that at the end of the day, no matter how much fun we have week to week, these same teams are going to be competing for the championship ultimately. And the more you exclude the vast majority of the teams participating in big-time college football and their fan bases, the more sour and despondent they become. The more they decide, this is not worth my time. I already know how it's going to end. See my conversation over the years, for many years, much to the chagrin of many who like to watch and are encouraging the sport to grow in the world of women's basketball. For so long, I talked about this is less about any sort of disdain I have for women playing basketball. I don't. Everybody, play what you want to play, and that's great. You can't shame me if I tell you I don't actually enjoy watching it. If I don't enjoy watching it, I don't enjoy watching it. It doesn't mean that it's a hint at some sort of deep-seated hatred of women or anything else. It means that there's a certain level of athleticism that I've grown accustomed to by growing up playing and watching men's sports, that the sports don't feel the same. Now, that's not true of everything. I talk about it all the time in tennis or swimming or whatever, soccer. I can enjoy it just as much. It's not true for me with basketball, and there's no deep-rooted reason for that other than the game is played below the rim in women's basketball and above the rim with men's basketball. And it's hard for me to make the adjustment. That's on me. I'm not telling you what to watch and not watch. But one problem I had with that sport for a very, very long time was that it wasn't competitive. That ruins any sport, men or women. It was not interesting, because there were 2 or 3 teams, primarily for a long time, one team that could win it. Everybody else felt like a club team. Watching anybody try to beat UConn was nauseating. It was, when you have Elite 8 games and Final 4 games being decided by 50 or 40 points, then your league's not competitive, and that was problematic. Now, it's gotten more competitive, and the sport has taken a huge leap forward, and I've acknowledged that, and that's great, because I want competitive balance. As a viewer, as a fan of sport, I don't care if it's men or women. I don't care if it's kids. I want competitive balance. I want something that the result is not in question. The result, is in question. It's not a foregone conclusion, is what I meant to say. And I can sit and watch and engage in the competition and the give and take. If I know somebody's going to dominate somebody else and there's a lack of competition, I'm moving on.
You just don't want to waste your time.
No, why? I mean, we have precious little as it is and enough distracting us as it is. So what you need is for the balance to exist, and it feels like, back to college football for a moment, too often lately, and I'm not saying this as sour grapes because Florida State is not currently anywhere near that upper echelon of college football that could find themselves in a college football playoff with a chance to win a championship. How quickly we have fallen off a cliff. But I am saying I love the sport. I love the sport. I watch games all day, every day on Saturdays and Sundays and again during the week. I am a football addict. I can't wait to watch it. I love every aspect of it. I like that it's the ultimate team game. I like that it's physical and brutal. I like that it is strategic. I like that there is money to be bet on it. I like every aspect of it. I do. But I don't like knowing going into every season that there are 2 teams, maybe 5, that can win it. That's not good for the sport. Whether I like it or not is somewhat irrelevant. If it's more that if others feel the way that I do, it's a problematic situation for college football. So why do I bring that up? Well, I bring it all back to this. Some of the fear with the NIL, and we'll wait and see. The wringing of the hands I haven't engaged in because I have a belief that the market will correct itself. It will settle. There will be interesting things that we learn along the way. There will be corrective measures taken in due time as we learn more and more about what's happening with NIL. But when you learn that a player who has not started a game yet for Alabama at quarterback is close to making $1 million with the NIL, it's not me that I'm not begrudging the money. Make what you can make. You're worth whatever people will pay you. I've said that before. If you can get that from a worker standpoint, in this case a football playing standpoint, I mean, whatever you can get, you can get. What I am saying is that if you have very few fan bases, alumni, and universities with that kind of passion and resources to do something about it, if very few of those teams exist and can take advantage of the NIL to this degree, the rich getting richer and the elite being even more elite and separate from everybody else playing the game will only grow. And that will create this foregone conclusion and lack of competition of which I speak that make us all very nervous. That's not a good idea. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, and I can't pretend to predict the future, but I know that it's not much of a competition if I'm sitting across from you and I'm Nick Saban and I have the cachet that I've already built up and the dominance that I've already displayed, and now I can tell you that, oh, by the way, if you come to Alabama, there's a good chance you could make $1 million before you ever step foot on a football field in the NFL, then I've won the recruiting battle again, decisively, in ways that will feel very unfair to, say, Michigan State or, I don't know, name your team, Washington State, Oklahoma State, right about now Florida State. I mean, it will feel like you have zero opportunity to cash in on some of the better players in the country when what you're up against is not just tradition, success, but monies that you cannot equal or compete with. So I do wonder what's going to happen. I mean, it is going to be exceptionally rare that a player is able to bring in that kind of money. There aren't too many players. I dare say I don't think the backup guard is ever going to garner that kind of money. And I think most of this, when you see the huge numbers so far, have come from highly marketable players, even in other sports. You know, the gymnast that has over 1 million followers on Instagram is extremely valuable to advertisers. But there aren't too many people that fit that bill in any sport, football or others, where you have that kind of marketability and that kind of social media presence built in to where if they approach you now, your message is being seen and heard and represented across platforms by millions of people. Most players don't have that capability. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. conversation stemming from the ACC media days, the SEC media days, what's happening as we move forward with Big Ten media days, all of that, and how exciting it is to be talking football again, to be talking about how close we are and the players and the coaches, tangible stuff beyond the theoretical. What if? And no, like real quotes, information, all of that. We've begun the process now. You all know what I'm talking about, that feeling that football is in the air. It never really starts for me. I used to describe this back in the day. I called it, I had a system. I used to engage in the system. Now, this was at a time where there was a bevy of bookstores to choose from. You could go to a bookstore and you could find several others, depending on where you were, what part of the city you were in. Oh, we got it. You can pull here, pull there. You got it. Bookstores everywhere. They're few and far between now, much to my chagrin. I love bookstores. I love record stores. And to some degree, I miss arcades. But not living in the past, knowing that our options are limited. But I say that to say this, because I would especially enjoy those bookstores when I knew that I could walk in, get a glorious cup of joe, walk to the back with my stockpile of preseason mags, previews that team by team, conference by conference awaited me. I would read those, not always cover to cover, but something close to it, and I would start with, before they were even known as such, the Power Five, if you will, and I would continue to consume coffee to the point where, as I sat back in the corner learning about West Virginia's offensive line coming into the season, I would think, oh, I don't feel so well. Yeah, ass, you've had 6 cups of coffee. Because you can't say no, you can't, it's a free refill. Damn it, coffee's delicious. What do you want me to do? So I would read and I would read and I would drink the coffee and I would think, this is a great way to spend a day. And for me, on the drive home, hand shaking, we have arrived. It is football time. Now that day consists of other activities and is shaped differently, but this morning, got up, drank my big glass of water to start the day that I try to do because I'm terrible about drinking water. I don't know if you've adopted that yet, Matthew, but water is water. It's fine if you're exercising. It's great. Nothing better than water after you've really been getting after it. For me, it's Orange Theory Fitness, and I'm on the tread, and I'm about to die, and I get off, and I guzzle a big thing of water. That's great. But when you're not exercising, water's boring. I want to drink something else, and preferably not something with caffeine all day long. So you've got to, for me, it might be tea, it might be whatever. I don't drink soda, so it's something along those lines.
I admittedly do not drink as much water as I should.
None of us do. None of us do. So I begin the day with lemon and water. They say that gets your body going and moving in the right direction. I cut a lemon in half, squeeze that sucker into a 32-ounce glass of water, hammer that bad boy. It's always my big Gordo's cup, and then I'm on for the day. Next up, coffee. After that, we try to figure it out as we go along. Not drinking enough water. Anyhow, the point would be, as I did that this morning with a little bit different system than what I'm accustomed to all those years in which it was the bookstore, now it's kind of, we do have ACC media days. We do have SEC media days. We do know that we can flip about and find these things, although if you're in Tallahassee, it's awfully difficult to tune into the ACC network, which has got to be first up on the concerns for Jim Phillips in rectifying a negative situation. But there's information. There are coaches, high-profile coaches, outstanding players sitting down to be interviewed, giving you a look into, as I said, the window of what their expectations are. A little bit of what do they see for themselves? What do they think is going to happen? To watch coaches have to navigate that is interesting to me because usually it's not an awful lot about what they say directly, but what they won't say. It gives you the information that you need. So you can actually learn something specific about what a coach thinks about his team without him ever saying that. And that's part of the process, that you're mining. You're trying to figure out what's what with these teams, and that's exciting to me because it begins the process. And for me, that takes the place of the old system. Now it's underway, and you do it with the NFL as they open up camps this week, and you get excited about that. And as you flip around and you're reading, and you're sitting at your laptop, and you're starting your day, it occurs to you 2 hours in as you look up for a report on the Colts or the Cowboys or the Bucs or the Steelers or whomever, and you're reading the quotes from a Nick Saban, or you're reading the quotes from, a Diaz or whoever you're reading quotes from, and all of a sudden you go, I just spent 3 hours with football-related content. Today is a good day. Mark the calendar, friends. The 21st is a banner day. There's comments about expansion to a 12-team college football playoff. Leach says it's never enough. There ought to be 64 teams competing in this tournament. You got Saban's comments about NIL. You've got again and again and again. We got news that the Colts have just extended Leonard for a very lucrative deal. They should. He's good. But there are football-related items, nuggets, morsels, something that helps wet the whistle, and there'll be more even tomorrow. And that's great because we've now concluded the NBA season, and I talked about that earlier in the hour, in grand fashion for Giannis and an all-time great performance. Baseball is in the second half of the campaign, I know, and we're all turning and looking for something. Sadly, that would ordinarily, at least for this year, be the Olympics. But here's the problem. What a mess the Olympics are. You've got real issues as COVID-19 cases rise ahead of the Olympics in Tokyo, frustrations amongst the city's residents, some of whom are wondering why these games seem to matter more than their own safety. They're voicing that. You've got protests. You've got people being sent home, athletes that is, and you just think, are they going to get through this? The games themselves don't feel like they're on display right now. That feels like a cluster. Unfortunately, tragically, for those that have trained their whole life for this moment, I hate it for them. It's awful. I really do find myself thinking about that more and more. Can you imagine you are at the pinnacle of your sport? You have trained your entire life for this moment in some cases. This is it. That's all. Only chance you're ever going to get. Not all these guys or gals are so good that they'll be back at the next Olympics. If this is delayed, somebody might be on the tail end of their career where their athletic prowess is waning. They have one last chance, and this happens. It's just a prolonged storyline that's enough to make you scream, but it's certainly something that distracts you from what is the core of the games. So in a lot of ways, football coming back when it is, and, I made some comments that I'm sure rub people the wrong way last hour about what these commissioners of the various leagues are going to have to do to ensure that we have our season and that people are safe. But you really are, and I am certainly, I fall under that category of people that are starving for this. I need this. We need this. And certainly the schools need it financially and otherwise. But you just talk to anybody that cares deeply about this game, and you want to ensure that the season will be played. You want to ensure that you can go to these games and sit down next to your friends and family and alumni and those that care deeply about these games and do so without this kind of a distraction like the one I'm describing about the Olympics.
38 days and a wake-up.
Woo!
Oh, no, excuse me. 37.
37.
We were off yesterday because of the T1 line. And Monday was 39.
So did some stupid farmer clip our T1 line? And I'm not saying farmers are stupid. I'm saying this particular farmer was careless and reckless and cut our T1 line.
I don't know. It could have happened, but I'm assuming it's just because of the weather.
No, I think it's a farmer. It's a vindictive farmer who decided, I've had enough of you, Cameron.
You want to go tip his cows or cut his tractor tires or anything?
Can you tip cows? People say that that's a thing. I don't know. Can you tip a cow?
I've never tried.
I've never tried either. I used to want to. I wouldn't bother poor cows now. The poor bovines, dumb as a post as they are, certainly loving creatures. Just standing out there in a field, sound asleep standing up. Although they lay down all the time. I see them laying down all the time. I used to think, why are they sleeping standing up when they can lay down? They're always laying down, lazy bastards. You see them in the shades. I always like the cows when you're on the interstate as you're driving and you see a cow that is separate from the rest of the cows. He's decided, I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm tired of you, Hank. I'm going to go over here with my white birds that follow me, and we're going to stand under this tree. I'm not dealing with your nonsense today. I'm tired of it.
I don't know if I told you, but I saw 3 goats on Capitol Circle.
Some of my favorite animals.
Last week.
Just wandering about?
Yeah. up there by Southwood. I think I was going to the transmitter site, actually.
Goats wandering about Southwood.
Goats walking down the sidewalk. Just 3 random goats. Nobody around them. Nobody looking for them.
We did
3
it.
random goats.
We did it, Charlie. Look at this neighborhood. Can you believe how far we've come? I told you last night was the time to make a go. And here we are in beautiful Southwood. Let's go eat some grass. Unencumbered by expectations of Farmer Joe, we're going to eat our grass and do as we please. Final hour forthcoming. Stay with Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Get in the car from me. No, there's nothing to do around here during the week, so we're going to
interrupting all programs. This is the Radio Crash on Pirate Satellite.
Final hour of the Jeff Cameron Show, at least for today. Thanks for tuning to it. I'm Jeff. That is Director Matthew. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. That's where you're going to listen live via the streaming free. Always don't miss anything, but if you do, go back and caught up at your leisure, for we shall post all 3 hours of the program upon the conclusion of the program. Apple Podcast and wherever it is you get podcasts. You want to email the show, feel free, fire away, jcs at 979espnradio.com. Hey, let me do this at the top of the hour really quick, because I'll forget and I'll feel bad about it. I'll be driving home and I'll think, oh man, you didn't remember to wish Ghost Pepper Nate a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Ghost Pepper. That goes back a long ways for you old school Jeff Cameron Show listeners. You'll remember how it is that he arrived at and won the moniker Ghost Pepper Nate. I'll never forget the day or the facial expression upon him eating a ghost pepper. Racing inside the Publix. Red, blood red. And then I thought we'd killed him. Oh, no. Happy birthday to you, good sir. Welcome to middle age. I believe you are 40. Okay, there you go. I remembered. JCS at 979espnradio.com. The email address, at least for now. On Twitter, it's at JCameron Show. And hello, YouTubers. A bit of solemn news today, sad news today, as we learned that Bobby Bowden, the legendary football coach at Florida State, but moreover, beloved man by friends and family and all of those that he encountered, has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. It was not disclosed. His condition was not disclosed in his statement. That statement reads, I've always tried to serve God's purpose for my life on and off the field, and I am prepared for what is to come. My wife, Ann, and our family have been life's greatest blessing. I am at peace. Again, I'll point to that last line. It is always comforting for those of us, as it clearly is for him, to hear someone say that they're prepared and at peace for the end of their life. So we wish him and his family and those most impacted by this news all the best, and we send our love. The accomplishments certainly around these parts need not be addressed here today. You'll hear a lot of them tonight across the country as this news trickled in. A lot of coaches in the world of college football had comments on it. Almost all of them certainly will share their reverence for the man as well as the coach. And alongside those news reports, you'll read about the 34 seasons in Tallahassee and the wins and the championships and all of the other accompanying accomplishments on the football field. But it's off the football field that most people will speak about Bobby Bowden and who he was and what he means. So that news is something that we thought certainly deserved reiterating to start this hour. I also did share some news of my own, considerably less important than that news, but news nonetheless. And that is that the future of the Jeff Cameron Show will be housed on warchant.com via podcast, YouTube, and on terrestrial radio with our new partners at 93.3 FM. There will be more details forthcoming along those lines about the days and the times and other aspects of what I'll be doing. I will be doing more than just the Jeff Cameron Show, and I'm excited to enter into a multimedia world, one that we probably should have done long before now, but this latest development in my career affords me a great opportunity, and perhaps the selling of this station was the impetus to do what I should have done long ago, and I'm excited to join those teams and to be part of this. It is kind of a dream come true because there are so many people now that I get to work with. I get reunited with my dear friend Tom Lang, and of course his extraordinary skills as a producer, amongst other things, but also so many of the guys there at War Chant and my new friends over there at 93.3 as well that I've either known or worked with or shared friendships with for a very, very long time. And that's true of Gene Williams, the founder and administrator of warchant.com, who sought to hire me and whom we were able to negotiate a deal. This was not always certain. Tom and I will have a Bellying Up podcast to talk about how this came about and when it became a reality. But in the very near future, in August, that's where I will reside, and the Jeff Cameron Show will live on. In the coming days and weeks, I will continue to do the show here on ESPN Radio. It's a unique situation. You'll find in radio, certainly, in most entertainment media, you're not able to leave one place and be on your way to another and still have the ability to do your show or whatever it is you're paid to do for that existing entity from which you're walking. But in this case, the station was sold. And some would say right out from under me. But I've appreciated the fine people at ESPN, and all those years ago when they reached out and wanted to hire me, I feel like we've had a very fruitful relationship, and both sides got what they needed out of it, financially and otherwise, professionally as well. And so I hold no ill will. And I am thankful that they have said, hey, go find another place of employment. I know you're going to land on your feet, Jeff, and when you do, you're free to talk about it on the airwaves. You're free to go into work every day. You're free to do this show. And I've had a lot of fun here this last, whatever it is, week and a half. Matthew and I feel like are doing great work. He stepped up huge, and I've enjoyed this, but it's a great opportunity, again, from a PR standpoint, but also just to remind you guys of where I'll be. If you're interested, if you're so inclined to continue to listen to the show, you're going to be able to access it a lot of places. YouTube, podcast, terrestrial radio, you name it. I'll be doing other projects in addition to the Jeff Cameron Show, like I said. So what a great opportunity. We kind of began the show today with that right after announcing the sad news about Coach Bowden. And that's where I wanted to start. But I also wanted a chance to segue to some of the other stories of the day, less solemn and less self-serving, and more into like, hey, man, it's ACC kickoff. It's SEC kickoff. Media days are underway. There's actual football news, as I was saying at the end of last hour. What a time to kind of start to kickstart the engines, right? We now know that from this point forward, it's going to be mostly football, and I'm anxious to get going. There's a lot of work to be done. It's going to be an incredible season, a weird season, one that will have a lot of highs and lows because this team is not a perfect product just yet. They got a long ways to go, but I always have enjoyed. I remember to look back on this when Coach Fisher took over at the end of Bobby Bowden's era, and time had, certainly had. Well, the game had begun to pass Coach Bowden by, in my opinion, and I shared that opinion, much to the angst of many. But we had those debates and those conversations and all of that for a long time, and we were at the end of that era where Florida State was kind of middling. Certainly, that cannot be argued. Florida State was a kind of a 7-6, 8-4 type program there at the end, and we were all growing frustrated with that because for those that love Florida State, follow Florida State, graduated from Florida State, support Florida State, this is a program that has proven that when operating at peak efficiency, it is a national championship winning program, one that finds themselves in the hunt annually. And now the fight is to get back to that place. And I remember when Coach Fisher joined the staff as first the OC and then later the head coach in waiting and then eventually the head coach, I actually enjoyed that process of watching him try to build this thing back to where it should rightfully be, right? And that's not easy. It's not easy. And you've got to find a way to convince recruits and others that have watched your struggles. You got to convince them that things are turning around and that they could be a big part of that and that your vision is this. And can they buy into that? Can you sell that as a coach? Do you put together a staff that allows for that to rise up and happen yet again? And that process, as a media member covering it, is absolutely fascinating because it's filled with successes and pitfalls. You know, it's not linear. You don't just suddenly, like, we go here, we hire this guy, success happens. It's like, no. It's ups and downs and step back and then a big leap forward. Next thing you know, oh, we're here. Look at that. Let's look back as to how it happened. And you'll look at that chart and you'll say, well, was it when Jameis Winston said yes? Who was the guy? Was it when you brought on this coach who was an elite recruiter in South Florida? Was it when you brought in this particular individual who was willing to do what it took to convince players that Florida State was their landing place? We remember all of these coaches, moments, players, the good and the bad, the loss to NC State, the subsequent successes maybe a year later than we had envisioned. I mean, that last year with E.J. Manuel we thought was going to be the year. Turned out not to be the year. Frustrations rose. Is this as good as it gets? What's going to happen? Jameis says yes. Then we have that fateful night at Pitt, and everybody, the nation included, went, oh, no, look at what they've got there down in Tallahassee. That son of a bitch out here slinging. This is going to be something. And it was. Whole lot of ass kicking. I called that the redemption tour, the revenge tour. The revenge tour will happen. We're not there yet. This season will not be the revenge tour. This will be the season that lets you know the revenge tour is coming. Now, the problem is, when exactly do we embark on that tour, the latter? Is it this the season that shows you you're 2 years away from the revenge tour? 3 years away from the revenge tour? That's what we'll be eyeing very, very closely. And I can't wait to do that and to have the opportunity to continue in this field, one that I have absolutely enjoyed every second being in, is not lost on me, man. I'm filled with gratitude today. To you specifically, Matthew.
I know.
We don't need to get choked up in here. To all of you, the listeners who make it all possible. I mean that. And, of course, near and dear to my heart, even more than the listeners, would certainly be those that spend money with me. Advertisers. Businesses that love the Jeff Cameron Show. I hope people get the both sincerity and tongue-in-cheek in that. I do think it will be fun. Because I think that they're one thing that you do, like when you're, okay, I'm sorry, I'm a degenerate gambler. It's easy for me to take this hard right-hand turn. When you're looking to bet a golf tournament and predict and project what kind of team you want to put together for a field in a pool, if you will, one of the things that you got to do is everybody will look at John Rahm and say, well, that's a safe bet. Everybody will look at, name your guy atop the world rankings. He's in the field. He's good. I'll pick him. Yeah, he ain't going to win any money that way. Everybody's picking him. Find the volatility. The guy that could run away and win the tournament because his game is equipped to do so, but he also might miss the cut. You take that risk, but that's how you separate yourself, is to grab the volatility. Maybe this guy likes POA. Maybe this guy likes, and you name it, right? It's a right-to-left golf course. It's a second-shot golf course. Whatever it is, this is the guy, best iron player in the world. A lot of people saw it coming with Colin Morikawa. And you take that guy knowing, I may miss the cut, but if he makes the cut, I could win the whole damn thing, and less than 20% of the people in this pool are going to bet on that. So why do I bring that up? Well, this season's going to have a lot of volatility. I think a ton of volatility. And with that comes the real extreme highs and the really low lows of not making the cut. And then sometimes just outright winning a game you have no business winning. It's a fun season to cover. I think it will be I just can't wait. I do. I find myself more and more every day kind of getting up going, we're this close to camp starting. We saw that announcement, right? August the 7th. Chance to go over there. And it's real fitting because August the 9th is when I begin at the new locale with warchant.com and 93.3 FM. So my first show over there on the air, August the 9th. And it will be after we've been over to practice and begun to see the process. And underway will be. And, one thing that we all benefit from is the fact that Mike Norvell, like the aforementioned legendary Bobby Bowden, and he's got a long way to go to be anything else like Bobby Bowden, but because he's young and he's early in his career is what I mean, he shared the belief that allowing the media to document every step of the way benefits his players, his coaches, and his program. And so we're able to give you day-to-day, straight from the practice field, shows with context. And that is going to be really exciting. Earlier today, after making the announcement that I just alluded to, we had a chance to catch up with Tom Lang. He's in Charlotte for the ACC meetings. And I thought, it would be keen to be able to get his insight from Commissioner Phillips' comments and what he had to say. I'll play that for you next. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Rocket dreams are flying. play with madness.
Holy Jesus.
Opportunity now to jet out to Charlotte, where I typically am this time of year for the ACC meetings, the ACC kickoff. But my cohort, my partner in crime, and now, again, my co-worker, Tom Lang, is there in Charlotte on behalf of warchant.com, and he joins us now on the Jeff Cameron Show. Hello, good sir. How is that hotel that we've been at many, many times?
It's largely the same. Good afternoon to you, and hello, champion. That doesn't get old yet, right? We can
Never.
still do that?
Oh, for up until we're not, sure. Yeah, hello, champion. Okay. And we're able to do it on the regular since there are multiple champions from our hometown.
I also can report to you that our pal from Virginia Tech was here and looking as dapper as ever on Coastal Wednesday.
Do you know how much that excites me to hear? I have to tell you,
I knew it would.
Well, it's crazy. There are little things you look forward to at the ACC meetings. They're largely uneventful, to be honest with you, and especially on a day in which Florida State's not featured. Today was being the Coastal. You always want to hear, in this case, from the new commissioner, and you want to hear from coaches, but you know, to find out that certain staples remain the same, especially in the wake of having lost our favorite coach in the conference that doesn't coach FSU, that is, a couple of years back now, we need to know some things remain the same, and that man's energy and enthusiasm for doing the job of PR for Virginia Tech is unwavering, is what you're telling me right now. That smile is, in fact, in place.
Oh, it was in place, and that was around 8:15 this morning, and I don't know that it ever stopped, because that's who he is. But I can tell you, too, that, of course, I miss you already, but I really missed you when I tapped Aslan on the shoulder. I was like, there he is. And he goes, who? I'm like, oh, well, you'll get it at some point, but there he is. That's our guy, man.
It's one of the things that we'll bring.
Making the rounds. A lot of the teams are making the rounds today, but it's, you know, for being a COVID event last year in which it's all on Zoom, this feels pretty much the same as it did in 2019. So a little bit of normalcy isn't a bad thing.
Okay, so let's acknowledge first that ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips was immediately pretty much asked. I want to get your overriding thoughts on what you heard from Jim Phillips in a moment, but I knew he would be asked, as all the commissioners are. Big Ten commissioners about to be asked this tomorrow. It was asked of Sankey of the SEC today. Jim Phillips, of course, about the teams, the players, the coaches being vaccinated as we move towards this season that we hope feels an awful lot like a pre-pandemic normal campaign where players and coaches fear not that on game day they have to wait until the last moment to find out if they're playing, and fans can, of course, find their way to their seats en masse. But we do have the variant that is on the rise. There's no denial of that, and these commissioners are going to be asked the question. For his part, Jim said that he knows the conference, for the most half, over half the teams, in fact, have exceeded the 85% vaccination threshold. He did add there's still no decision currently on whether games affected by COVID-19 will be rescheduled or rather forfeited. Now, I take a stance on this that may differ from others. I believe that if at this day and age we're still dealing with people not wanting to be vaccinated, that is their choice. But, of course, it is also the league's choice to decide whether or not you can play football if you're not. And I think in order to find this sense of normalcy of which we speak, you're going to have to mandate it. And if guys don't want to do it, they don't have to do it, but they also don't have to play football. And therefore, we avoid the NC State College World Series situation, Tom. Can you give me any more on what you've heard from Commissioner Phillips?
Yeah, sure. So specific to that, I think he's got to really do a tightrope walk in his first ACC kickoff. It's his first real chance as commissioner to address the media. People show out for, as much as maybe the old guard wants to believe that there's a bigger turnout for the basketball media day. This is the day when you can have the most ears and eyes on you. And he's got to make sure that he respects the universities to make their own decisions, and then, moreover, the players and the coaches to make their own decisions. But he was unequivocal in stating that from a personal standpoint, he's a big believer in, the science of things and getting the vaccine and obviously moving things along. But he did stop short because without maybe Power 5 or the entire conference in agreement on a policy, it's tough for him to make definitive statements and maybe overstep his bounds. So I think he was extremely cognizant of where to walk the line, but he went as far as he possibly could to suggest, this is something that needs to get done. And he did that on a number of issues, but certainly That was one of the big ones that people were listening for. And then one other thing I can tell you is with the Delta variant on the rise, he was asked, do you have any answers on policies when it comes to rescheduling or postponements or forfeits? What's the ACC's, policy going to be on these potential issues that might crop up? And his answer was reasonable. It essentially is, listen, everything is fluid. If we've learned anything about COVID and the situation of how things move with COVID, you've got to wait for as much information as possible before making a decision. You need to be as informed as possible because the rule you make today may be completely outdated 2 weeks from now. So I thought that was a reasonable answer.
It's a very good answer. It's an on your feet, on your toes kind of answer that buys you time to kind of figure out an overriding policy. I do like that he stated unequivocally, to your point, there's no question that increasing the number of vaccinations provide the best chance for teams to compete. That's the bottom line. That is true. We know that to be true. And I think commissioners are losing patience, if judging by Sankey and Phillips' comments, that not all these teams are adhering or really aggressively pursuing this option. Certainly in the Southeastern Conference, it's no surprise that is the case. It'll be interesting to see what the mandate becomes moving forward, because the NCAA and these universities cannot afford to have games canceled again. We know about the financial losses. They're going to have to make extreme decisions. Now, we move on from that, Tom. You just said something that he had answers prepared, but it felt like to you he wanted to say more. Can you be more? Yeah. Can you extend on that a little bit more and give me some more insight on what you mean when you say that?
TV, first and foremost. He made a point to prepare remarks from start to finish in his statement. None of it was off the cuff. He was constantly checking it was old school printer paper that he was looking down and making sure he hit all the notes that he wanted to. So I think this is somebody, first of all, that is very careful. Every word matters when you read a transcript from the commissioner. Every word is carefully crafted. But with TV and distribution, he brought up that, it's one of the cries of all 15-member institutions, when you include Notre Dame and all sports but football, that distribution has to get better. Got to be on more TVs. And there was a reporter from Roanoke who took advantage of the moment because they announced 2 extra games on the ACC network for this season, one of which was Virginia Tech and Notre Dame. I believe it's Notre Dame at Virginia Tech. But either way, the reporter from Virginia said, well, here's the problem is within 10 minutes of that being announced, a lot of folks are saying, we can't get the network, so what are you going to do about it? And it seems like he's optimistic that in a couple of weeks' time, they may have some announcements. And the way he couched it was late summer, early fall. That's typically when renewal negotiations come to a conclusion. And that's when Comcast deal, of course, we all know about this, especially in our part of the woods, is Comcast comes up next year, early next year. So would it be on in a market like ours? And I think he's prepared to say something more important, something that would catch our eyes. But this is somebody who very much, I think, values all I's being dotted and T's being crossed before committing to that. So the number one thing I would say is distribution. And he knows, he said it, for us to be the league that we want to be, distribution is number one. So I know that's music to the ears of Florida State fans and all of us to a degree, but you have to see it to believe it at this point because it's been 3 years for the channel.
Yeah, it's of the utmost importance. We figured it would be his first biggest challenge and one that he would need to hit out the stadium here. He'd have to hit a home run with something like this, if possible. We just wondered about the kind of leverage that he would have or not have. That includes whatever negotiation he's going to have with Notre Dame to try to bring them into the fold of the ACC and football full-time down the line as well. Anything from coaches that stood out today? I know, again, it's just Coastal. We're less interested in that particular division. It is part of the ACC, and there are some intriguing teams there, in particular Mac Brown in North Carolina as well as Miami. So your thoughts on what you've heard from coaches today from the Coastal?
There's not a whole lot of substance. Of course, today our focus was heavier on Miami being the rival and North Carolina being on the schedule. Ben Diaz did say some interesting things. I asked him about Derek King and what it's like to have a grad transfer quarterback and what are the challenges and what are the benefits, because obviously with Mackenzie Milton being in the fold here, I wanted to get some insight from somebody who lived it and in a weird way gets to live it again. you don't expect a grad transfer quarterback to be around for 2 years, but alas, COVID eligibility says you can. And he gave some good answers, about as good as he possibly could. He said, our team needed somebody to reset the standard and reset the way things were done, and we needed to bring somebody from the outside to do it. I didn't believe any of the players that we had in our locker room could do it. And so, he went on and on about that, but get the point is when something's not right, sometimes turning to a veteran outside of the program is the best way to signal a reset. And maybe that's exactly what's happening with Mike Norvell. As for Mac Brown, not a whole lot. He was asked about Florida State, and he kind of chuckled. He said, well, I told our team before we kicked off in Tallahassee that we're not the number 5 team in the country despite our rankings, because there's only a few conferences playing. And then 3 hours later, we were number 25 in the country. So, we've got to focus to ask me when we're 3-0, if we can get to 3-0 kind of a thing. So, it's the usual thing, man. You've been here for so many years. Coastal Day, you're looking for any nuggets, anything interesting. And I think number one today was just that Jim Phillips was ready to go on the record about a lot of stuff and say his piece. And I think that you're going to be hearing a lot more from the commissioner. Oddly enough, you'll be hearing a lot more from the ACC and the commissioner in the weeks to come. But all eyes are on tomorrow, as Florida State obviously brings 3 players up in the 2 quarterbacks and Jermaine Johnson. And there's going to be a ton of content on War Chant. And if we need to do another hit tomorrow, then by God, we can do it, because that's the deal we've swung.
Yeah, final couple things. Absolutely we can, and I'm excited about that. But on a somber note, certainly there will be an opportunity, because it came about later in the day, to address the sad news that legendary former Florida State coach Bobby Bowden has been diagnosed with a terminal illness for his part. He was quoted to the Tallahassee Democrat today as saying that he is at peace. We can talk more about that tomorrow, as we have touched on it some today. One final thing. I was remiss and skipped over something I wanted to ask you about the NIL and what Jim Phillips may have had to say about that, only because I think a lot of Florida State fans, and I think a lot of football fans everywhere for that matter, take a look at Nick Saban's quote at SEC Media Days, in which he is noting that his quarterback, who's never stepped foot on the field as a starting quarterback for Alabama, Bryce Young, we all know he's talented, but is approaching nearly $1 million worth of endorsement deals already. That opens a lot of eyes. It's not just Florida State fans, but the entirety of college football when they say, we're already losing out on the best players coming out of high school to Alabama. Their athletic and dominance and prowess along the sport is well noted. But now if they're also going to be able to give the players deals in which they're going to become millionaires before they ever suit up in the NFL, well, then this is over with and nobody can compete. I'm kind of curious, were any comments from coaches today as well as new Commissioner Phillips about the NIL?
Well, I think that the tune has changed for coaches that weren't on board, because you better change and adapt or else you're going to die on this front. Mac Brown was upfront about it, and his example was, well, I never thought this was a good thing, but then it was explained to me that if we have a talented musician who's on scholarship, they can still make money off of themselves for a gig. So I kind of get it about athletics. Why can't it be that way there? I think what you're going to find is the coaches who came out against players being paid are going to find similar anecdotes and all shucks kind of stuff to say in order to pivot and move forward. For Jim Phillips' case, the hard part for him is he has to speak for the whole league. And, a program like Florida State, A-OK, man, because of legislation in the state of Florida. But what he's pushing for is federal legislation so that every university can be on the same footing. Because, for his part, he said, I don't want it to become a recruiting advantage for some programs over the others. So once again, it's just one of those deals where, Commissioner Phillips may feel a certain way about things, but he has to communicate, especially in his first major address as commissioner of the league for all 14/15 programs of the conference, not just the ones that are benefiting from NIL right out the gate.
Prudent comments from a commissioner who has a lot to tackle, but has to be very careful about how he proceeds and has to get it right, especially when it's the first couple of things that you're going to be noted for, and they are as significant as they are. My brother enjoys Charlotte. Perhaps, if you're so inclined and fortunate enough, you will find that sleepy Irish pub that you and myself have been known to have a few Guinness or Guinea at in the past. I wish you well, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Be good, sir.
Yeah, sounds good. Is it Guinea? I'll ask the Irish bartender because I'm about to find him.
Yeah, I don't know, but please find out for me. As one who's been to Ireland, I could have asked the question, but perhaps I was intimidated and didn't want to look like a fool. But enjoy one either way, whether it's Guinness or Guinea, and I'll talk to you again later, buddy.
Hey, man, congrats on letting the lawyers tell you like it is again.
Yeah, man, thank you. It's good to be back with
See
you,
you,
brother. Bye. All right, that's Tom Lang of warchant.com. Kind of fun to say now that I'm a part of it as well. It's also Tom Lang of The Jeff Cameron Show and 93.3 FM Real Talk Radio. How about them apples? All right, more of The Jeff Cameron Show momentarily.
These days my friends don't seem to know me without my suitcase in my hand. And when I'm standing still, I seem to disappear.
been a eventful day, to say the least. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you missed large swaths of the show and the news items of the day, remember, we'll post it as soon as the show ends. So in about 10 minutes, you'll be able to, hopefully it'll populate quickly in your feed, and you'll be able to find the link and listen to the show via podcast. That'll be happening. I can also tell you that the move here for me to War Chant and to 93.3 FM is going to, I think, better enable our ability to service the podcast and YouTube and all of that more efficiently and more trustworthy. It's been a bit of an up and down journey and a bit of an up and down ride, and that has always really eaten at me because there's nothing more frustrating and bothersome than when somebody wants to listen to something you have to say or is entertained by your show and they can't get it and they can't find it, and they're asking you why, and I can't give them good answers other than our infrastructure sucks. And that made me want to throw things and scream to the heavens, because that's just not cool. But that's going to change. That's another thing that will change here with this news. By the way, Front Row Knowles are up next. Great show. And that show was recorded earlier, I think either this morning in the day or late last night. I'm not real sure which. I don't want to mislead you, but I do want you to know that it was not done at a time post the news about Coach Bowden addressing his terminal illness. Because I can assure you that Tom Block and Keith Jones would have had much to say about that. And they will in the very near future, okay? So just know that that's not addressed on tonight's Front Row Knowles, but it's not because they're ignoring that piece of solemn news. It's because they recorded the show before that news had broke. So just so you know, I want to make sure that you understood that. And I'm sure they wanted you to know that. All right, it's time for us to get to probables. Before we do, I should note that segment brought to you by North Florida Payroll Services. My friends at North Florida Payroll Services, they're locally owned, have been nearly 15 years, offering payroll and HR services. That includes full online applicant onboarding and integration into payroll. Save your company money and headaches today. Head to northfloridapayroll.com. Cue it up, good sir.
It's time for, how you say, with the pitching, probables?
A lot of day baseball games today. Matthew, if you might, give me some scores out there on the Buccos D-backs and perhaps Mariners Rockies. Can you please tell me that the Pirates aren't in the midst of getting swept by the D-backs? Caught you off guard. That'd be the Pirates and the D-backs playing earlier today.
Okay, the Pirates are down 3-4. Top 6.
Plenty of time to come back there. Otherwise, we're going to get swept by the D-backs. We got a final with the Mariners and the Rockies?
Okay, Mariners and Rockies. That's the other game you said. 6-3 Rockies.
All right. You're a little nervous there. You're like, who the hell is he talking about? I speak fast. I understand.
None of these teams are playing each other.
Marlins, Nats. Been a rough year for the Marlins. Nick Neidhart and Eric Feedy. We've got the Phillies and the Yankees. I watched some of your Phils and Yanks last night. I was watching that game.
Oh, yeah?
You guys just sit there in neutral. Freaking neutral.
Pay a lot of money to be a neutral.
Yeah, Spencer Howard's going to throw for you tonight. He's not very good. The Yankees will throw Asher Wachowski. He's never started a game. Time for you to light him up.
Ever?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he started somewhere along the way. Let's see here. Asher, what have you done? He has, in his MLB career, gone a stunning 9-15 with a 5.95. Not very good.
8 shutouts tonight.
Sizable whip to go with it. Hey now. No starts this year. Bo Sox, Blue Jays, Garrett Richards, Robbie Ray. Hey, Rangers, Tigers, Jordan Lyles. He of the sorry-ass Lyles family. Matt Manning going for the Tigers, Twins, and White Sox. Michael Pineda, Dylan Cease. Indians, Astros, Eli Morgan, Lance McCullers Jr., Cubs, Cards, Kyle Hendricks, Adam Wainwright, the ageless Adam Wainwright. That I have an irrational disdain for, but I'm sure he's a good enough guy. I just screw him. Giants, Dodgers, Logan Webb, Julio Urias. By the way, that's one great thing about sports is the over-the-top irrational disdain you have for people you've never met because they wear the wrong jersey. That's me and Adam Wainwright. Like, damn it, man. Orioles, Rays, Alexander Wells, Michael Waka. Padres, Braves, Chris Paddock, Kyle Muller. Saw where Fernando Tatis today got a 3-1 pitch and knew what to do with it. Mets, Reds, Marcus Stroman, Jeff Hoffman. We've got the Royals and the Brewers. That'd be Brad Keller and Eric Lauer. And that is a look at those that shall reside on the up. Yeah, man. Okay. All right. Exhale. We did it. I've got some golfers to pick tonight. I got the golf show to do tonight. Hard to get excited about previewing the 3M Open, admittedly. The 3M Open, one of the opens that I have won on PGA 2K. I've ran away with the 3M Open.
There you go.
We like playing there. It suits our eye. You and I are going to have to play each other.
Okay.
I've gotten pretty good.
How much are we putting on it?
Well, I don't know. $100?
Sure. Who cares?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's throw caution to the wind, get after it. But we'll have to debate as to which course we're going to play. That game is awesome, by the way.
Well, we're not playing at the 3M Open, I can tell you that.
I'll run away with it. I got you. Every nook and cranny. I know where we're landing in this baby. Uphill putts all day long. Let's go. Let it ride. Yeah, no, I'm that's one of the few that I like. And I'm worried that I hope they don't discontinue that game. I wonder if if it was able to sell because Rory. It's tough to sell Rory, I mean.
Yeah, there was one Rory game, and that was it.
That was the end of that. They went to Justin Thomas on the cover. Ill-fated timing. But the 2K is a good brand, man. I like it. It's a good game. We didn't get into the weeds with Rory, you and I, but we should have. Do you realize that the next major, when they tee it up, which is 7-8 months from right now, he'll be going on 8 years since he won a major?
Well, and he won't win the next one because it's the Masters.
It's the only one he has left to win.
Yeah, so he's not going to win it.
8.
He can't win there.
8 years. Well, he was once running away with it. I don't know why he can't win there. 8 years, by the way, between majors means that I'm inclined to think you are not going to win another one.
Makes no sense.
Well, he fell in love, got married, had a kid, placed golf probably where it should be. He's made billions.
I blame that tennis girl.
Broke his
that's
heart.
when it all started
She broke
going
his
downhill.
heart. She was beautiful, but broke his heart. And then it just, he never really recovered. You got to buck up, Rory. You're Rory effing McIlroy. Let's go. That's, it's frustrating watching that play out with that much ability. I don't get it, man. It just aggravates me to no end. But here's a side bet that's fun, and we'll conclude the show and wave goodbye to everybody. Who completes the career Grand Slam first? Colin Morikawa, Brooks Koepka. He's got to win 2 more majors, not, of a separate variety. He's got to win at the Masters, obviously, and the British. Brooks Koepka, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, who only needs to win the PGA. Phil Mickelson, I suppose, who only needs to win the U.S. Open.
No.
Or Rory McIlroy, who only needs to win the Masters. Who are you taking out of that bunch?
Given the way he's playing right now, I guess Spieth, because he only has to win 1.
Yeah, probably. I think you got to go with Jordan Spieth. And then I would tell you, next up, I might take Brooks because he's in every major.
I was going to say Brooks or Morikawa.
Yeah. You're not going to say Rory, who
No.
also only needs 1, and it feels like he's light years away. Like you would never pick him in that. You might take Phil before you You might take Phil's old ass to win the U.S. Open at some point.
Who wins another major first, Rory or Tiger?
Can I go with neither? I think we're done with Tiger's majors. Hey, just be grateful we got the last one.
Oh, I am, yeah.
That was something to behold. As a sports fan, and we're both fans of Tiger, that was something that I'll never forget, that moment. Really, he gave us two incredible moments. Winning in Atlanta and the crowd going crazy as he walked up there. And then, of course, obviously winning at the Masters, which gave us goosebumps. We were all sitting there in shock. I remember the moment I thought it was possible on the back nine going, this could happen. This could happen. Because I didn't believe it all day long. I was like, oh, I'm not going to let myself get into this. And then all of a sudden he sticks that shot. Everybody else is in the water. You're like, this could happen. This could happen. Don't blow it. Good work out of you, sir. Our thanks to Gene Williams. Our thanks to Tom Lang. And our thanks to all of you. Appreciate it. Be well. We'll be with you tomorrow. Take care. Have a good night.